It's just one of those weeks. We're so happy. There's so much energy about Star Trek in the universe right now, right, Jim?
I mean, it's funny. It's positive energy and I hate to say negative energy, but frustrated, righteous indignation energy, just with some of the things that are going on with Paramount Plus right now, and Prodigy, and just all that stuff. And certainly I want to be a good licensee and be supportive, but at the same time, like, Paramount's not doing right by the fans, in my opinion, and the fans are letting them hear it. And we'll just have to see, what happens with it all. But fingers crossed that somehow Prodigy finds a new home, and someday we'll get the license, and maybe we can do something with it. But for now, we're just kind of like, okay, just what does this mean? We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, hey, I work in organizational development and business impact and marketing and communications, and data drives decisions. So whatever data Paramount is looking at, I guarantee you that if they were raking in the cash with Prodigy, that would drive the decisions. So something's happened. But I remind people that Star Trek, the original series, was only on for 3 years, and the fans ended up altering the data so much so that we now have the 56-year legacy we have now. So don't give up. If people want Prodigy that bad, there will be vehicles that make it happen.
Yep, I hear you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And of course, on continuing missions, we invite everyone who wants to feel free to contribute to the ongoing saga of those wonderful kids. They are not dying in our memories, and I hope to see some great fan fiction at least spawned from Star Trek Adventures on that. Mm-hmm, in fact, today's subject, we're going on to Captain's Log, talking about Chapter 5, which is the rules of play. But there's nothing that stops anyone from using Captain's Log to continue the adventures of Prodigy.
Seriously. Yeah, absolutely. Make up the characters and go forth. Write your own stories. In fact, I think I was talking to somebody on social media about that earlier, is that, if you're frustrated with what Paramount's doing with Star Trek, or you've got a great idea for a Star Trek series that is never going to see the light of day, get this book, make it up yourself. Write the story, then share it with us so that we can read it and enjoy it.
Exactly. And so just so all of you who've just dropped in and don't know who the heck you're talking to right now, I'm Michael Dismuke. I am one of the co-hosts here of Continuing Conversations, which is all about Star Trek Adventures RPG. I'm also a blogger on Continuing Missions and a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG. I had the privilege of being the lead writer on Captain's Log, which I hope to say ends up being the rave solo RPG of 2023-2024. And let's introduce Jim Johnson.
Hey, everybody. Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Menditheus Entertainment. Lo, these many years now, 7 years, going on 8. And I am the co-host on this here show with Michael Dismuke, now 90 episodes strong, heading into we're working on finishing up year 2. And then we probably should be thinking about what we want to do for that year 2 finale or continuation. It doesn't really, not really a finale. It's just a continuation, right? We just have an ongoing storyline, but we're approaching year 2. So the end of year 2. So we should probably think about something cool and special to do.
Our year 1 celebration, we were honored to have Dayton Ward and Scott Pearson come, but now we've made so many new allies to the game that we could really have a showcase come year 2. So we'll start planning that now and send the invites out. I know I have a short list of who I'd love to show up to talk about the game.
Very cool.
That would work.
But yeah, cool. So we're going to talk about Chapter 5, yeah, and I don't know how you want to set this up, Michael, but I know that you had an opportunity to talk to Alison ahead of time because she's in the UK, and so the time zone has just made it challenging for us to all connect at the same time. But tell us a little bit about what that was. Set up that piece of it.
Sure. So for weeks we had been trying to get Alison Cybe, who really was key to developing the rules for Captain's Log. Really, Alison took the lead. There was some input from me, Josh Allen, who we met earlier, who did chapter 3. Al Spader chimed in. Of course, we had a bunch of other people take a look at it, but really Alison took the lead on it. So I'm pleased to say that we were able to wrangle a time to match Alison's schedule. And what we're going to do is actually cut to that interview. We're going to go ahead and cut to that interview. And then when we come back, Jim, I'm going to be curious to hear what you have to say about chapter 5, some of the challenges and the rewards of developing an entirely new rule set for Captain's Log. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so we'll cut to that. We'll be back in a moment. As promised, we wanted to make sure that we put a spotlight on all of the different people who are so heavily involved in creating Captain's Log, Star Trek Adventures solo RPG, first venture into solo RPG. We had to really travel literally all the way across the world to nail this amazing interview that we're bringing into this episode, and we're cutting into this episode. This is Alison Cybe. Alison, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about your role with the Lower Decks, Lower Decks. Wow. Sorry, we have so many new pubs coming out with the Captain's Log book. So why don't you talk to us about your role with Captain's Log?
Hi, I am Alison. I write Star Trek Adventures for Modiphius. Hello. And we worked where we worked together on creating the Captain's Log, which by the time this goes out, I'm thinking everyone will know about it. Yeah.
They will. And then since this is your first time on the show, we've tried so hard to get you on the show before, Alison, and it's a privilege to have you here. But we got to ask you the question that we ask everyone who comes on the show for the first time. So tell us your favorite Star Trek series and your favorite character.
Oh God! Well, I grew up with TNG. I at about the height of it, Deep Space Nine came out, and it kind of became my favorite for the longest duration. It's Strange New Worlds. Of course, it's Strange New Worlds. I love Strange New Worlds.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I mean, we're watching this.
It has knocked Deep Space Nine just off the top and just clawed its way on at number 1. It really has.
I got to give it to you. Just this week, are you up to date on season 2 episodes so far?
When you say just this week, I don't know how many weeks ahead this is going to be. We are recording this as of week 2.
Correct.
We've done episode 2.
I honestly have to say that I've been watching after episode 2, and I've been vacillating all week if this is my favorite Star Trek episode ever.
Yeah, that was an episode. We watched it less than 24 hours ago. I am still working through it.
I'm about to go into my third watch. So fantastic. Okay, so Strange New Worlds, that's great to hear. Your favorite series so far and your favorite character.
Oh goodness. Are we talking like the whole of Star Trek?
Yes.
Whole of Star Trek. That's hard. Garak.
Wonderful.
We love Garak. Wonderful. Yes.
Definitely top 3 for me. Top 3. Yes. So 7's my favorite. She's a prophecy come true back when she was on the show that has developed in ways I really had wanted them to develop the character. So but definitely Garak is the one who entertains me the most when I watch. So
he's just fantastic. Really.
Indeed. Okay, fantastic. We got through those formalities. So now let's jump into this. For those of you who want a little background, Alison was really the chief developer of this new game set. We worked along with Alison, myself, and Al Spader, really running a lot about like, what's this game about? How are these mechanics going to work? So really, I want to hear from you. When you first heard about this project, having played Star Trek Adventures before in that rule set, tell us about the emotions, the challenges, what you were confronting.
I mean, it was a big surprise for like to be told this is one of the projects that we're working on, to do essentially a solo RPG for Star Trek. That's I just thought, wow, that's ambitious.
Mhm.
That is ambitious, and I think collaboratively between all of us, we each had different experiences with solo RPGs, and we were able to just pick pieces from each other's ideas to put it together. But first up, I just thought that's a really ambitious project. How's that all going to work? How's it going to take shape? And just the development of it was just kind of an exercise in just watching it take shape. That was amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that too, because I'll tell you about we worked primarily over email. Yeah, we never even had one Zoom call to discuss development. It was all over email and text pretty much.
Yeah,
But
like
I want
big
yes,
big emails.
yeah. So let's go backwards a little bit though. Talk to us about your experience with Star Trek Adventures as a role playing game, and then if you want to, a little bit about. Well, let's start there, and then I'll have a follow up question.
Well, I first got into Star Trek Adventures like basically the year it came out, or actually, yeah, because I picked up the rule book just within the first few months. Um, gave it a good read through. Didn't get the chance to run it until the starter set came out. Whereupon that just made it really accessible. We were able to just bring that along to our local club. Put some games on the table. We had some people who were really curious about how it worked. Obviously you're doing a role play club, you're gonna have some Trekkies in there. So yeah, of course we did it, and I just thought that's solid. I'm gonna do a campaign, put together a campaign, had so much fun with that. That was like just 6 months, but that those 6 months stand as an incredibly strong campaign. One of the favorite ones that I've ever had. Just so many great memories with it. And I thought at this point, great, I've had so much fun with this. I get so many ideas just while playing it, like other ways that these adventures can go. So I reached out. That was about the time I was getting into the industry. I reached out and I said, hey, Jim, could you if you're like looking for other writers? And he said, yes, we are. Come aboard. And I was like, okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Glad to have you. And what was the very first thing you wrote for Star Trek Adventures?
That was for Discovery. Our first Discovery rule book.
Right.
Setting book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mission. That we call them
mission.
Source books.
Yes.
Source books, yeah, exactly. Cool. And I know we had tried to get you on an interview for that when we were going over the Discovery source book too. We weren't able to. What was your contribution to that?
Those time differences are so tricky for us. They really have been. I did an adventure for that one, which was it was like the horror themed kind of surreal thing where you've got like hallucinations going on aboard the ship. Because like some of the earliest Star Trek shows I watched was like towards the end of like TNG, like season 5, season 6, season 7, when they really started to have a bunch of those kind of themes and styles explored in the ship and on the show. And I just kind of thought, okay, I would really like to get something like that, into one of these books, because I think was it the third episode of first season of Discovery was one of those dark corridors. There's a scary creature in there. It was like a good horror themed kind of a show, and in the end of it, it was the tardigrade, which was just awesome. I want the tardigrade back.
I mean, those are fun. I like that you wrote that one, because my favorite episodes of Star Trek tend to be the ones where they don't leave the ship. I'm a homebody and an introvert. I hate leaving my house. So I love the fact that I wouldn't actually have to leave my ship and still be able to have an incredible adventure. So that's cool that those are some of the episodes you like.
But you're on your ship right now, aren't you?
Ship, I'm on my ship. I'd like not to have to leave. Believe me, anytime I have to leave the house, I tell my wife, this is an away mission. Let's go on our away mission. Got to get back to the ship. All right, good. Okay, cool. And so that was the Discovery source book. And then finally now, you're you're used to the Star Trek Adventure rule set, and then all of a sudden now here comes Captain's Log. So we're in chapter 5, Rules of Play. How did you tackle this? What was your approach initially?
Initially, we kind of looked at what main rules we wanted to bring from Star Trek Adventures and pare down to a single player system. Just kind of looking at it and going, okay, this rule is kind of universal. That can apply no matter how many players you've got. So try and incorporate that into how a single player solo format would work. That was kind of like the first bridge to cross, because that kind of gave us the skeleton, like the main structure that we could start bringing other concepts onto and placing them on board. So that was kind of step one for it.
Had you played solo RPGs before?
Yes. I mean, I kind of grew up on the choose your own adventure kind of books. So, like they are the like the introductory kind of role-playing game. I was going to say like tabletop role-playing game, but the books that don't necessarily have tables. But yeah, it was they were at the time, like being a child of the 80s, they were like designed for them. I don't know if I can drop any names, but the Fighting Fantasy ones and the Lone Wolf ones.
Yeah, because I dropped names because people may want to go explore those and buy them on Amazon or wherever they can find them, eBay.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. They're the ones with like the multiple numbered paragraphs. At the end of them, they give you like a decision. Go to this one. You go to that one. You've got like a monster you have to fight. You roll some dice for it. They were designed to introduce you to role play games, and the Fighting Fantasy ones in particular. Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, who wrote them, like set out to introduce Dungeons and Dragons to the UK via those as a medium. So that was kind of like probably one of my earliest introductions to tabletop role-playing games. So and they're all essentially solo games, like single-player games. I remember that they had like a box set with 2 of them, which was a 2-player book. And yeah, that was an interesting thing. I covered that way back with a friend of mine, Stuart Lloyd, on the Fighting Fantasy podcast. Actually, I don't know if I did cover that particular one. We've covered a lot of them together, but yeah, it was kind of really quite fascinating. And a bunch of the other ones, Lone Wolf in particular, started out like that. And yeah, they kind of were my main influence going into the Captain's Log, like how to bring some element of that where you can kind of structure a narrative going from a point to another point to another point to another point, and how you can allow the player to do that. And then we started to look at how to create something that was more self-generating as well, which was fascinating.
So let me ask you this then. So say I'm picking up this book for the first time. How do I need to gear my brain now that you've helped develop the rule set? How do I need to gear my brain to get the most out of it? Maybe I'm picking up the book, reading chapter 5. What advice would you give people?
If you've played Star Trek Adventures before, you're going to feel quite familiar with what you're doing. You're going to be finding problems, challenges that will come up, and you'll be responsible for tackling them in a variety of different means and methods. If this is going to be your first introduction to the world of Star Trek Adventures, then you're in for a real treat, I think.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the main philosophies that we decided really early on, that we wanted someone to be able to pick this up and to run it, and for it to be an introduction. You could also take like a character that you know, like maybe your regular from Star Trek Adventures, and play that character in Captain's Log. You could take a character from Captain's Log, play that character in Star Trek Adventures. You know, you could have interconnectivity with
Yes.
that.
Jim and I were just talking about that point. For someone who's new to the game, they don't need to know anything about Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah.
Right. And that was one of the design points of it, is we wanted people just to jump in and have fun from the beginning. And I think you did a really good job making it, because to me, one of the challenges that I saw we were having initially, pardon me, one of the problems we were having initially was figuring out what's too simple. Right. We were like, let's simplify. So did you find that really hard? Like, did you feel it was too simple at some points and add in a little complication? How did you balance that?
I think we got a really good balance on it, because like you say, you're essentially taking a fully fledged system and cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down. You can always put things back onto it as well as you go, and we did that several times too, which was just, yeah. I think we really kind of like put a nice structure onto it. I don't think we cut anything that that like stayed out because it wasn't useful. We kept everything that felt useful, that felt like it would be smooth for a one-player system. I remember there was one of them that we were looking at and just going, how would this really work? We want to keep it because it was such a familiar part of Star Trek Adventures. I can't remember which piece it was, but like later on we realized we're going to have to restructure it. I mean, we're going back over a year now, aren't we?
Right. I know.
Yeah.
We've been sitting on this for a while. One of the things that I know you did, and we, I think, contributed to also, was we kept it super simple, but then we gave the option of how people could make it more crunchy if they wanted to.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And so we kept doing these inset boxes like, well, if you want it to be a little bit more complicated, here are some options. And I thought that was cool. Yeah. So those of you picking up the book for the first time, you could ignore the inset boxes and just see the boiled down basic, especially if you're more narratively compelled. But if you're using this as a writing tool, next week's episode is about chapter 6, where we're having Jacob Ross and Chris McCarver come on, where we talk about, okay, here's how to write a story. But this chapter 5 is about, here's the rule set. Different, right?
Yeah.
On that one there. One of the things that was created was a mission tracker. It's on page 186.
Yeah.
And can you give a brief explanation for those who are looking at the mission tracker for the first time? Why the mission tracker?
So your mission tracker in this one is, we realized when you're creating a story, and this is like any kind of story, whether you're like reading a story, pick up a book, watch a film, all of those stories have structures. You have like your first act, your challenge, your secondary act, leads into a complication, twist, the finale. Every episode of Star Trek, because each episode of Star Trek is a story, works to that same plot structure. Your mission tracker is your way as a player of seeing that structure. It divides the story into arcs, each of which you are able to basically use the mission tracker as a tool to create a pace and a flow to the story, and kind of chart. I say chart, but kind of gauge your level of success as you go. And of course, that feeds into the next part, which was how you write the story, because essentially you're playing a game about putting a story together.
Yeah, exactly. And I love it. I play the game now myself. And one of the things that I had to learn early on, so I'll give this tip to people who are playing it, is at first, when you read through, you think that the first task, once you complete a task, that's the end of that. Check off a box on the mission tracker. No, that could be the case, but you could say, well, no, this scene will be comprised of multiple tasks and a bunch of roles in order to decide what the outcome of that scene is. And then at the end of that scene, you check off that box and move on to the next one. So that's something that advice I give to people is read carefully the rule set that Alison developed about what makes the end of a scene also, what makes it so that you check off that box, because that, for me, creates a lot of variety of play.
Yeah, it's all, it was all kind of in service of creating the idea of how does an episode of Star Trek play out. You reach the end of a scene, that scene doesn't just sit in a bubble. It will impact what happens next and what happens next, and you can kind of like use the mission tracker to guide you through this. It's about giving yourself permission to create inspiration as you go.
Yeah, and what I do is, as I'm in season, in Act 2 of any story, that's where things just start falling apart. The world is crumbling in Act 2. So what I noticed I did is, as I got into Act 2, I started rolling way more complications and threat rolls on myself. And I said, I'm not going to try to go for a solution. I'm going to make things as bad as possible. Yeah. And then I'm going to try to dig myself out in Act 3.
Yeah. It's all about giving yourself permission to go with that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's really, to me, what's the crux of this. And then that moves us over to page 192, talking about momentum and threat, because it is different than Star Trek Adventures. For those of you who played Star Trek Adventures, re-gear your brain. For those who are new to this is new to you. It's going to be way simplified. So talk to us a little about how you evolved momentum and threat into the system.
Oh, goodness, it's been so long ago since I did that.
You want me to read off the choices for you?
I know that we going back, we really reworked how momentum worked. It was
you boiled it down. You really boiled it down.
You don't gain momentum like as points. It's something that you either have or you don't.
Correct.
If I remember right.
Yeah. In fact, right? Yeah. So that's the biggest thing is before you have these big pools of momentum and threat. And we went, nope, we're going to use it almost like a plot point where now if you generate momentum, you can re-roll a dice, you can add an advantage. So go to the table and add an advantage, or some sort of you can do what's called a momentum spin table to see things that benefit your character. You can use it to eliminate threat if you've rolled and generated threat, or you can save it, but you can never have more than one at a time.
Yeah.
And we play tested that, and I was like, "Oh, this actually really, really works."
It was just really funny. That as you can tell, that's the piece that stuck with me. Just kind of taking that. The thing is, when you're playing Star Trek Adventures, you can generate momentum and it can go into a pool. So you have the entire group around the table generating momentum, keeping the flow of the story going. When there's just one of you and you're doing it solo, you have momentum as a character. So that's what's pushing you forward. So you either have momentum or you don't, and you want to push back in to have that momentum going again.
Yeah.
I just thought,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I just thought that, that works a whole lot better when you have like a solo kind of experience. If you have like, I think if I remember right, the usual is like, no, it is. I know this. You have 6 momentum max in the pool. Of course I know that. I don't know why I was doubting myself. And for a group of 6 players, that divides up usually to about 1. And it just kind of like on a maths level, it felt right.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, threat, I'm going to give people some advice. If you really want to keep the tension up in your game, threat could be used if you generate threat, which would be rolling a D20. So once you do that, you either create a complication, again, you roll on the random tables to see how your life is getting worse, or you increase difficulty. And what I liked about that one is I increased difficulty a lot, meaning you now have to roll with your 2d20, 2 successes on your next challenge. And that's probably the one I use the most, is increased difficulty, because it sets you up for failure quite a bit, which you want to have happening in Act 2 of a story as your world is crumbling around you. So again, really super simple, but I can tell you right now from playing multiple games, I sit there having these epiphany moments. I talk about this with Jim, epiphany moments where it's like, oh my God, it's so horrible. Okay, how am I going to get out of this? And I'm sitting there on the couch and my wife is like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, you don't understand how bad it is for my captain right now. So I have to congratulate you on something so simple, but that's full of so much drama.
Anytime you're using threat in Captain's Log, you are giving yourself permission to make things exciting and dramatic and complicated.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. And then one of the things we worked on was values, directives, and focuses, which are, of course, different in Captain's Log. So make sure to read through that. One of the things I noticed, we have a lot of inset boxes with examples of play. What was the intention around? What was your intention around that?
I love writing examples for how rules work. It's so I say it's so easy as a player to kind of go, okay, that's how that works. Wait, is that actually how it works? If you have like an example of it, like you're seeing like on the page a character go, this is how this rule works. You are reading along as someone's it sinks in and it clicks and you feel confident with it. Really, we use those to kind of build the reader's confidence with it, because it's a solo game. You won't necessarily have a GM to kind of go, it works like this, or other players that bounce the ideas off and go, how does this work? You need to be fully confident with what you're doing, and if you have a box after each rule to kind of say, so this is how it would work for that character, you can read over and you can feel confident that you know exactly how it works, and you can launch in, and you're not so worried if you get the rule like you're not 100% with it, because you've seen how it works. So you can go, okay, that's how it works. You feel confident and you feel right with it.
Yep. And I want to emphasize that again. Every rule has an example, which I thought was brilliant. And then one of the things we did, we worked with Josh Allen, who was primarily the writer of Chapter 3 about character creation, because we wanted to make sure we had visualizations for the rules. And so like on page 203, let's talk about combat, because I think this is probably the one we went back and forth the most on developing.
Oh, we did. Yeah.
Right. Was the combat rules. What was the challenge you saw there?
The challenge of that one was that a lot of that was looking at what we would consider, balance for the player. We didn't want it to kind of boil down to rolling dice like repeatedly over and over for like, here's for my character, here is for Klingon NPC A, Klingon NPC 2. You're rolling, and you're just kind of thinking, okay, so all I'm doing here is rolling dice. I'm not putting a story together for it. So we had to kind of really go back and forth on how do we like make this mesh in a solo game where both you're keeping your decisions matter and have impact to the story, where you have threat with combat, because you need like risk, challenge, reward in order to feel to feel that it's worthwhile, to feel that there's any real sense of danger and excitement with it. So that one we really needed to go back and forth with it, because the approach that you would normally take in building a role-playing game for a group of people doesn't necessarily apply with Captain's Log.
Yeah, and I want to say, because in a crunchier game like Star Trek Adventures, if you have 3 good guys and 3 opponents, there's a lot of dice rolling. In this one, It's more, and this is, I'm going to help frame people with this. It's more, does your character's actions in this round benefit them or put them in more threat? It's not, did you make that punch? I think it's so easy to fall back into RPG. Like, did I slash him? Did I shoot him? Think more like, what's my character's action this round when they're cornered in the alley by 3 thugs? Mm-hmm. Now, we're not going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's what was the action that round? Roll for it. Was it successful? Narrate why that was successful. Yep. If it failed, narrate why it failed. So that's going to be one of the big things I'm emphasizing when I'm showing people how to play this game is during combat. It's not about taking down shields or taking 13 stress. It's about things are going well for you or they're not going well for you. Narrate that, right? Yeah. And then if people do want it crunchier, we actually have inset boxes about that too. It's like, go ahead. If you want to, go ahead and bring in rules from Star Trek Adventures and run stress and damage that way, right?
Yeah, it's like we want to give players the option to bring in as much as they can, but at the same time, we want you to be able to pick it up and get the exact focus on what you're wanting, and the focus is for the character, because this is for the captain's log. It's your character. What's the most important thing for your character at the moment?
Yep, and the ships are treated basically the same way. You're gonna see that there's a roll chart for ship battles, and think of it the same way. It's not whether or not you're losing 4 shields or taking 2 breaches. It's whether did this round turn out well for you or not. Okay, cool. All right. So then the chapter pretty much wraps up talking about the different modes of play. And you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. I really like the just the sheer variety of different like formats and like ideas that we brought in there. I was right on board with the idea that you can make a character in Captain's Log and have that as a format for a kind of own personal campaign. That was awesome, and just having the again, we can touch on the interconnectivity here, can't we?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is we talk about porting the characters back and forth, or even I call it a campfire game. It would be possible now to sit at a campfire with your friends and use Captain's Log's rules, as opposed to pulling out a big thing with all these momentum chips and threat chip. You can actually play a collaborative game using Captain's Log for those who are really storytelling bent. So I thought that was really nice that was developed as an option with the rule set.
I just love the modes that we had that allowed it for kind of ongoing missions, like campaign kind of structure of that. Like you go on a mission, you take these elements with you to the next thing. You take a little piece of each mission with you along to kind of create the Captain's Log.
Exactly. Well, I mean, for you, just thinking about all the work that you put into this, Alison, that this is groundbreaking to me. I mean, this is the first IP that I know of that has done a solo RPG to this level.
Yeah. I love that, and I love the idea that your character that you create, that's your captain. You are creating their missions.
Yes.
So you're personalizing it. It's your Captain's Log. That's your book.
Yep. We've talked about people using this to flesh out their career events that they actually play in Star Trek Adventures too. So now if you're rolling your career events, why not go roll in Captain's Log what that adventure was? Because that will make way more of an indelible print on your memory if you decide to transport that character over to Star Trek Adventures. You're going to be like, oh, I played that game by myself, So good option now. Good option. All right. Any last advice that you want to give before we cut back to our regularly recorded show with Jim?
Definitely give it a shot. Pick up a copy of Captain's Log, because we all worked really, really hard on it, as you know. And most important thing is, remember, it's a game about creating story. The rules are there to allow you to create the most exciting story that you can. So take advantage of every chance that you get in it to create something that's exciting and stays with you and is a lot of fun. And if I can also, if anyone who's listening can also like tweet hashtag Save Star Trek Prodigy.
Word. Very good.
Because that is such a good show, and Save Star Trek Prodigy. We love Prodigy.
It is. Let me talk about this, because this will be the first time we actually talk about it on the show. I know this is going to air in late July or August, but Prodigy teaches kids Star Trek, and that's why it was so valuable to me. That even
it really is, right? It really is.
Episode by episode, it teaches you one facet, one trope of Star Trek, and that's going to make it an everlasting show to me, because I will be telling people to watch it. The first season will get you through everything you need to know about the Star Trek universe, which is really cool. All right. Do you want to do gratitude? We usually close with gratitude, but since you're our guest and we're cutting back to the other show, why don't you close with gratitude for us?
Oh dear. I'm really shy.
You could think anything. You could think the butterfly that landed on your windowsill. I don't care.
Goodness, I don't know. Well, thank you very much for having me on. As you know, it has been difficult to get this booked in. For everyone who's listening, I'm in the UK, and you are like all the way over in the States.
I know, 8 hour difference, right? 9 hour.
It's about I don't know what time is it.
8 plus. No, we're 11 hours difference, because I'm in California. I'm in California, and right now we're recording this at about 1. It's about 1 p.m. PST here, and you're landing on what time?
It is just going up to 9 o'clock.
Yeah. So so that's a 9 hour.
Are we on the same day?
I don't wait. Yeah, I'm on Saturday.
I am. Yeah, it's the 24th. I am from your future.
I love that. That's just awesome. Can you please tell me what I should be investing in right now? I should call you on Mondays. Actually, when the stock market opens. All right.
And I will also thank one of my friends from the States who was able to send me over my Star Trek hoodie.
That's tough.
It does give me my rank. So
you're a captain?
I am a captain.
Oh, I would have referred to you like that. I'm sorry. I just can't.
Well, I worked on Captain's Log, so of course I've got my own ship.
What is? Actually, tell me about that. The game you play. What is your ship?
We have the USS Sutherland, which is a Constitution class starship. Yeah,
that's right. It's a cannon ship too, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of like borrowed one from the cannon to just
Nothing wrong with that.
To play from.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, Alison, it's been a pleasure to meet you finally after all this time. Like I said, we were only talking electronically, so seeing you face to face is wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for having me on. You mentioned gratitude. That's the big one.
Okay.
It really is.
All right, great. All right, thanks again.
Oh, thank you so much. Take care.
All right. It was so nice to get into the head of Alison and really figure out the challenges that they were posed with. One of the things that, in review that we talked about was really, Jim, your instructions to us when we designed this game was to make it so that someone who never played Star Trek Adventures before could actually pick it up, digest the rule set, and be off on solo RPG. For those who are fans of Star Trek Adventures, we had a double-edged sword in a sense. Not only did we have to make it so that they have the option to port their character and start playing solo RPG if they already have a character in Star Trek Adventures, but we had to put enough meat in here that they could actually contribute and add on to their current Star Trek Adventures. So one of the big things that came out was man, have you ever thought about using Captain's Log in order to build the career events that Star Trek Adventures always talks about that happen? So playing out your career events to enrich in your character. So Alison was able to, as we just heard, Alison was able to talk a lot about that. But Jim, I really want to talk to you about the history of these rules of play. What were some of the challenges you were concerned about in trying to transform and make the first solo RPG for Modiphius for Star Trek Adventures?
Yeah, I think the biggest, like when we were putting together the prioritized requirements for this, and we were putting together the Moscow list, which is the must-have, should-have, could-have, won't-have list that we do for all of our projects. We really wanted this to be accessible to new gamers, but also new fans of Star Trek. Right, we wanted to make it as easy as possible to get into the game, get playing, and go start telling your own adventures, and not have to get mired in elaborate mechanics or meta currencies, or just all that extra great stuff that's in Star Trek Adventures. We wanted to try to streamline the rule set as much as possible, so you can just get right into the drama, right into the game. Just like if you're watching an episode of Star Trek, right? We wanted to remove as many barriers as possible. So, that was going to be the biggest challenge, in my opinion, was like, okay, how do we take the robust Star Trek Adventures rule set that has been award-winning, proven over 7 years, solid overall, and like, how do we streamline that in such a manner that we can make it really effective for a narrative heavy game? So that was the biggest thing. There were some additional bits, like we really want flowcharts. We want flowcharts of like how to play, how to create your character, how to create your ship. We wanted to make it visual and easy for people to get into it, and like just look at one page and say, okay, there's a flowchart, I got it, I'm off and running. Because that's something that we weren't able to include in the first rendition of Star Trek Adventures, like the standard core book, because that was 7 years ago. We probably didn't have it in our brain or in our DNA. It's taken us time to learn how to do this better or more effectively or whatever. And so like all that stuff that we've been learning over the last 7 years, all the insights that we gained from working on the player guide and the game master guide, that all kind of folded into Captain's Log. Is like, okay, we want to do this a little bit differently, and make it work. So I know that there was a pretty large, tall order handed to you and me and the team. And of course, at the time, I was developing 3 other books at the same time, in addition to this one. And one night I came to, I was doing some introspection and just thinking about it and looking at the production schedules. And I was like, there's no way I can do all 4 of these books by myself. There's just no way. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to you to be the lead writer on this one. I reached out to Al Spader to be the lead writer on another one. And by you two being able to take on a little bit more responsibility than you've done before, that freed me up to finish those other 2 books and really focus on those 2 to get them to where they needed to be, which, is really important to all the product lines anyway. So I know I kind of handed you a tall order on this one.
It was good. It made me appreciate you more about what you do every day with the books. So it was a good lesson.
Thanks. But I think you and Allison and everybody else who got involved, that we brought into the orbit to work on it, did a fabulous job. But I don't know where you want to start necessarily. Well, but I'm just looking at that.
Well, one of the things that we didn't talk about, Allison and I, which you just kind of touched on, is those flow charts. We talked a little bit about flow charts, but I know that one of the things I was looking to with the design of the game was I knew I would want to be printing out the pages, especially the flow charts and a lot of the different rules or probability matrices. And I have a wall right here. I know no one can see it, but I have actually a huge bare wall here. And I said, when I'm playing the game, I'm going to actually have it up here for quick reference. So the game was designed with that aspect too. Maybe we went through and talked about some of the basic, some of the rules, some of the basic rules. We did touch on that. One of the things we didn't touch on was on page 181. We had talked about examples of play and that they're interspersed in here, but 181 and 182 is probably one of the most intensive examples of play I've seen since the core rulebook. Mm-hmm. Where we really break down how to generate a mission, right? So again, that was part of your instructions to us to make it super simple. How do you think that's different from a lot of the other books, or do you think it's the same? Or
well, I think like if you look at the standard edition core book that came out 7 years ago, I think Nathan did a really good job of putting a lot of examples in there. He put a lot of great examples into the book. as we've gotten fan response over the years, especially for some of the key mechanical components, fans have been watching more examples, right? And then they go to the internet, they look for videos of people explaining it, they look for other blog posts of explaining the rules, etc. And when enough people are saying we need more explanation, that tells me we either need more examples in the book, or we need to do another pass through the rules, verbiage and clean that up, or both, right? Maybe it's a combination of the two. You do super clear language in the rules, and then you do super clear examples that relate directly to the not just to the show, but also to the rules you're presenting. And so we knew, and I know, in the Klingon Core book, we provided additional examples on here's how Starship Combat works, step by step, going through an example, providing an example, and laying that all out. And then for this book, I really wanted to take that to the next level, right? So not only are we using flowcharts to explain the gameplay and the life paths and stuff, but here's some super clear examples taking you step by step through the rules, through the dice rolls, through the momentum spend, the threat spend, whatever. Just trying to do as much as we can to make it clear. So I think the examples that you and the team put together are more comprehensive than I've ever seen. I mean, certainly in a Star Trek Adventures book, and I would struggle to think of another game that I've seen such detailed examples in any of their supplements. I'm sure they're out there, and this is me being ignorant because I've been in a Star Trek bubble for 7 years, Star Trek Adventures bubble for 7 years. I've looked at other books. I've looked at The One Ring and the Forbidden Lands. And I see some examples in there, but it's never enough. Especially certain books, I want more robust examples of how to either create a character or do task resolution or whatever. And I get frustrated when it's not there, because then that means I have to go to the internet and start digging. And that frustrates me more, because I think about, as a project manager, I think about how many gamers are out there who don't have reliable internet, or just don't go online to interact, right? We've already talked about this extensively on other shows, where I know that there's got to be a huge gamer base of Star Trek Adventures who are buying the books, playing the game, and they're just not online. They're just not talking about it online. I can see the numbers. I see the sales numbers, and I see the numbers of our total audience on Discord or the official forums or whatever. And there's a significant disparity.
Yeah.
Which is, they're just not talking about it, which is fine. Been playing it,
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that was different about this, and Alison touched on it a bit, people who pick up Star Trek Adventures may tend to be game masters, and they're rallying people to come in. People picking up solo RPG, you are your own game master. So you may not have that forum of discussion that you like you said, there's the people online who are, a lot of game masters are online helping each other out. Mm-hmm. Someone picking up solo RPG may not be part of that community. Does this book have enough examples of play and explanations that they're okay? And that was a huge concern with the design of the game. Are the rules digestible on one take so that you don't have to conference with others on it? And all those lessons learned you talked about from the previous core rule books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the thing that the thing I'm nervous about, and this isn't nervous in a bad way, it's just the anticipation. I don't know how this book is going to hit, right? I don't know what to expect, because we've never done this before. And we've been very careful not to say anything about this book until the press release comes out, and then the pre-orders at the same time. So we've dropped this book on the world and on the Star Trek, Star Trek Adventures audience and the Star Trek audience pretty much with zero fanfare, very little fanfare. And that's just a different experiment that we're trying out just to see what happens. But we won't know if these examples are effective until we start getting feedback from the fan base, right? I mean, we did playtesting, we did internal playtesting extensively, right? We spent a lot of time playtesting this game. And I know that you had a lot of people in the playtest circles that you were working with that were like, oh, they love the game and that's great. But there was that learning curve that they had you to help them with, right?
Right.
And what I'm a little nervous about is, and again, this is not a bad thing, it's just an observation, is that these examples are very comprehensive, and it's a lot of text to read, right? Because there's really no other way to do it. You have to present the text and you have to read the book. What I'm thinking, though, is I suspect that you and I and other people will probably take to social media or Twitch or YouTube or whatever, and we're going to be playing this game live online, or we're going to be recording it online and getting it up there so people can see visually how does it actually play in practice.
Yeah, in fact, 2 weeks after this recording, I think we're actually going to do a play. We're going to show people how to. We're going to do a riff session, and we're going to show people. We're going to roll dice, and we're going to actually show people how to launch our adventure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I mean, just looking at the book from a gamer perspective, I'm like, wow, this is super comprehensive. And talking to a couple other people that I've done interviews with, they're like, wow, this is super comprehensive in terms of examples and like how to play the game, how to tell stories, how to be an effective, not fanfic writer, but to be thinking about the writerly stuff, because that's part of what this is. So yeah, I think that was certainly a design challenge for the team, was to like make sure not only use flowcharts, not only streamline the rule set, but also put really clear, good examples in here on how to play the thing. And I remember you and I talking a lot as we were moving toward layout, in terms of like, okay, what order do we want the chapters to be in? Like, what do we present first? What do we present second? And there was always, I know there was a few times where I was pushing back and saying, look, I think you got great content here and you got great content here, but I think they need to be combined. And your argument was, no, we got to present the rules first and then go into the storytelling. Yeah. And I think ultimately, you were right, which is good.
Well, it wasn't me. It was, I'll say it's Nathan Dowdell, because what inspired that was a comment Nathan Dowdell made, in fact, in a previous interview, where he said people play RPG not just to tell a story, chapter 6 of Captain's Log, or just to play with rules, chapter 5 of Captain's Log. They play RPG to mix rules with story. And so that's why I differentiated that, inspired by Nathan Dowdell.
Yeah. And it took me a while to get that piece of it, right? Because like for the longest time, we were looking at Word documents, and a lot of pieces of Word documents and flowcharts and spreadsheets and components, right? And it took me a while until it was finally all together. The manuscript was all together in the chapter breakdowns. I was like, okay, now it's starting to sink in. Now I'm really starting to understand what we're doing with it. And then it totally crystallized for me once I finally got it in layout. Like once I actually saw it in the layout, in the structure with the graphics and the flowcharts and everything else, I was like, oh, now I get it. And now it's really come together. And it didn't hurt when I got the print proofs from the factory of the Unbound book, right? I was like, oh snap, here we go. Now I've got a page that's just the flow chart. I've got a page that's just the character sheet. I got a page just the core game loop. And we decided, once I realized it was all coming together, I was like, we got to pull these particular pieces out and make it a separate PDF that they can download and have that. Like you were saying, it's on your wall. This is exactly the same thing that the players can do, is they can print out these important pieces, print it out, have it side by side with them with the book and with their writing tool of choice, whether it's a typewriter or a Neo or a laptop or whatever, so that they can have those reference sheets handy until it gets ingrained. Because I'm confident, Michael, I don't know if you've gotten to this point already, but like as I've been dinkering with this, playing with it, I'm like, some of the core game loop and the probability matrix are almost ingrained in my head. It's almost second nature. So I'm not quite there yet. I think it's at a certain point, if I play this enough, I won't need the cheat sheets to rely on. It'll just be in my head. It's like, oh, I need to roll a 18 or 20 to get a probability X or whatever.
Yeah, I've memorized them actually.
But in the meantime, we got the cheat sheets as a crutch, which is what they're there for. But anyway, I think I've gone off topic.
Well, no, actually, one thing I want to do to kind of build confidence, as much as for myself, but for you, is based off the interview you recently did with Dice in Mind that I listened to. By the time this airs, it'll be a month ago that you did this. But you did a 2-part interview with Dice in Mind. And there was something they said at the end of the interview, after you had finished the interview, about the quality of writing in the books, that even if they weren't playing the game, they still want the books. And I think happy to hear, the same team that worked on those other books, many of them were also doing Captain's Log. So I wanted, when I was arguing about the validity of the book, because whenever I sell anything, I have to sell it to myself first. That's my rule. So I remember having some pretty deep conversations with Al Spader, you, Allison, Aaron Paulier, about what would make me have to have this book. And one of the things was the set of rules where I said, you know what? I want this set of rules to be so good. that for my narrative-based Star Trek Adventures group, we might defer to these instead. Yeah. Because we're so good at narration that we don't need heavy mechanics. So that was one of the things that we didn't talk about, myself and Alison, on the interview, is that I had to sell myself on this because I'm a hardcore group player, but I said, and I've always played solo RPG, but by myself.
Right.
I've never had a book to go by. I said, this has to be the book that I would pick up and want to reuse. So those are some of the, highlights with chapter 5. These rules, how they were developed are, hopefully they stand the test of time.
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows? Right now, it's way too early to figure that piece of it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, having been involved in this game from the beginning, and having been on social media as much as I have, and as much as you have, of course, I feel like during the pandemic, like early 2000, was when I and we collectively really started to expand our brain and realized that there are a whole bunch of people playing this game super narratively, right? Like they're using the mechanics for the most part, but because they're doing the Twitch and the YouTubes and the actual plays and the live streams and all that stuff, they're not quite so concerned about getting the rules exactly right by the book. Rules is written raw, but they're doing enough. They're using enough of the mechanics that they're getting into the narrative flow. They got the scene and encounter structure down hard. They're using momentum. They're using threat. They're making it work, right? And me personally, like when I was running my game for a while there, it was just turning into like a weekly radio drama, right? Because literally, we didn't even use video for our for Discord and for Roll20, and so like we were just literally just riffing off of each other, and I was throwing them situations, and occasionally there would be tasks to roll to keep things moving. But because we were so narrative focused beyond the scope of what was originally in STA, the more I look at this and realize, oh gosh, I think the next time I run an STA campaign, like a long-term campaign, I'm probably going to be leaning more toward Captain's Log than STA. And that's no knock on STA at all. It's just, the way I've been running STA really rules light. It's like, well, that's almost what's here, right? Because I know you and I have talked about this a lot with a lot of our guests, in that, like, for characters, in my opinion, the most important thing for characters in Star Trek are their values and their focuses. That is the big two things. And then the attributes in the departments are certainly important too, because that's what they're good at, or what makes them them. But like values, focuses, that is the absolute key pieces of stuff for me to get into the game, either as a player or as a game master. The talents are nice, but the talents are really primarily focused on changing things mechanically, right? Which is totally great. And of course, there are certainly great ways to take those talents and use them narratively, right? To add to the narrative and stuff. But what I'm discovering is, because we made that conscious decision in Captain's Log to just remove that piece of it, like just take talents out completely. Although we did reskin them right into focuses, right? We changed a lot of the talent names into focuses, which is perfectly great. I think, and then you also streamline combat, right? Personal combat, Starship combat.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to your point, actually, if you think about talents in Star Trek Adventures, the purpose they serve is to change probability. They add an extra D20. They give you the ability to re-roll.
Mm-hmm.
We truncated all that into the probability matrix. What's the probability that this action is successful, for simplicity's sake? So it's there, but it's super condensed into the probability matrix. And that's what talents play in Star Trek Adventures, is just giving you a better chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I have, it's grown on me, Michael. I'll be the first to admit that. Especially now that I've got, and I'll show, and I'm not showing this off just because I've got it in front of me. Once I got
You're showing off. You're showing off.
But I don't have the actual book yet, so I'm a little frustrated that I can't really show it off. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that, like, looking at the Word manuscript was one thing, looking at the PDF of the layout was another thing. But like once I actually got it in my hand and I'm able to flip through the pages and I'm actually able to see the stuff on the page right in front of my face, just like if I'm a fan buying this book for the first time, like this is so accessible as a storyteller, so that I don't have to think about the mechanics or where the story's going. I can just go to that probability matrix, or any of the probability matrices and say, well, shoot, I need a character to interact with here. Roll, boom, boom, boom. I'm done. My creativity is sparked again, and I'm up and running. So that's really been helpful for me. And damn it, I lost my train of thought.
Well, it's good. No, and I want to say, we have cheat sheet boxes in chapter 5 telling you which probability matrices to use when. So that's where we're at. I'm really hoping that the rules are digestible. I want everyone to remember, you just use the word accessible. In addition to the game being accessible, we're accessible, on social media. If you have questions, right?
Yeah. Although I don't want people to lean on that as a crutch, right? Like, because someday this book will be out there in the world to enjoy, and you and I may not be here, right? Or we may not be accessible anymore. Like, who knows, right? I mean,
because we'll be too busy writing a Star Trek show together.
Or maybe these books will stand the test of time, and 50 years from now, somebody else will be using it as a story prompt or something. But
when Prodigy comes back, they're going to invite us to write it. So I think we'll be super busy doing that.
But in the meantime, everybody, if you have any questions about the game, or you want to get another example of how to play it, reach out to Michael, reach out to me. We'll help you out. But now I remember what my point was, Michael. What has grown on me by looking at it in this format as a book is that it reminds me of what you exactly said a few minutes ago about Nathan, is that not only is this a storytelling aid and a way to tell stories, even better, more effectively, et cetera, it's also a game. Right. And that's the piece of it that I struggled with for a little while there, because I remember you and I had this conversation where I was like, well, here I am, I'm working through it. Why would I even roll in the probability matrix? Right. Like, I'm a writer. I already know what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And you pushed back a few times, and I apologize. I will apologize.
Oh, no, I thrive under. I love conflict. First of all, conflict grows. So keep going.
I hate conflict.
I love conflict. Oh, the universe can't exist without. You'd have no sun without conflict. So come on,
I know. But anyway, so you pushed back and you said, well, instead of just making it up, let the probability matrix help you tell a story. Let the game be the game and play the game. And I was like, damn, that's right. It's a game. It's not just a bunch of storytelling prompts. It's not just a bunch of things you pull out of a 3x5 card deck and go, I'm going to go write that. There's probability here. There's unpredictability. There's dice that's involved. And I don't know why it took me so long to make that connection, but I know on other shows we talked about Pendragon, right? Pendragon is one of my top 4 favorite RPGs ever. And one of the things I love about Pendragon is that the system that Greg Stafford created, all the characters have a set of 13 values, or I don't remember what they're called. They're the traits or something. And they're on each of them are opposed, and they're on a scale of 1 to 20, right? So you could be chaste or lustful, or bashful or courageous, or earthy or spiritual or whatever. So there's these 13 things that are on the scale, and in character generation, your character, you establish where they are on the scale for each of those. So you might have like a 16 chaste and a 4 lustful or whatever, or perverse or whatever. Mm-hmm. But anyway, as your character is playing the game and as you're going through situations, your character might end up in a place where their values are being tested, and you might not know what they're going to do. What's in your best interest as a player may not be in the character's best interest. So you roll on those random things, and you have to accept what happens. So if your character is in a banquet or something, and they're trying to be chaste because they're a knight and they don't want to get involved, but they fail, and then they go on they take the lustful route, then you got to go with it and just see what happens. So it's a really neat mechanic where the character does something that the player may not want them to do, just because it's a game and because the character is not the player, right? They have, it sounds weird to say that they have some agency because they're just, statistics on a page, but when you're in a role-playing game, they're more than that, right? And I think Star Trek Adventures certainly does that to a different degree, where the characters are much bigger than, I have more knowledge than the player, right? Because we've never been Starfleet Academy. We don't serve on a starship. We can't possibly know what a Picard or Wesley or a Riker know, but we are role-playing them to the best of our ability. But we have to rely on the character knowing stuff, and that's why we have task resolution and focuses and so on and so forth. Anyway, so my point is, I finally grokked the idea that this is a game, and so as a natural storyteller, I've learned to loosen up a little bit and just let the game help me tell the story, right? And so I'm really enjoying that piece of it now as I play with this on the side here when I have time. And so I would just encourage, people who are checking this game out, this book and this game out, use those probability matrices, use the tools that are here for you, because it'll help break down any blocks you might have, and it'll actually make you more creative, in my opinion.
I agree. You're going to see and again, you're going to see in 2 episodes from now us doing it. So they'll get a chance to see that. All right, good. Well, again, I have to give a big thank you to Alison for working with our schedule and my schedule to get the interview. And Jim, again, thank you for pushing on helping develop this amazing rule set and putting us to task. So should we head off to gratitude?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have not seen your interview with Alison yet, so this will be an exciting surprise. I'm going to assume both of you went down into the weeds on like personal combat, starship combat, all that stuff.
We did, but if there's anything you want to highlight, I'd love to hear it.
I don't know that I need to highlight anything other than I thought the team collectively did a really nice job of streamlining everything, and breaking combat down into just a handful of hits as opposed to tracking stress and whatever. I thought that was really useful, and I'm curious to see how the fans react to that. But I like it. I mean, I think it's a neat alternative mode to the full-blown STA. And I also appreciate that we collectively made it work so that someone playing Captain's Log should have a fairly easy transition over to STA if they want to graduate to STA. It should be a fairly, I mean, knock on wood, it's a fairly painless transition. But then going the opposite direction too, if you're playing STA and you want to do Captain's Log for some of your interstitial things, or you want to just add more color to an episode that you haven't talked about, it should be a fairly easy lift to go from STA to Captain's Log.
We talked about that. To add on, I think we're actually going to see a subset of players who, for instance, a game master or a player whose group can't get together for 3 weeks, but that one person has the time, sometimes that's me, where they're going to say, hey, I'm going to go have a side adventure with my character. I'm going to make sure that it stays boxed in. It's not going to affect the other canon, but it's going to give me something to talk about. I actually think we're going to see that developing as a subset, Jim, and I can't wait to hear those stories. I want
to have a whole episode riffing about that concept in a couple of months. Once this is hit and starts settling in, I'd love to do that. One question I do have, Michael, just kind of flipping through the book here. Did you and Alison have an opportunity to talk about the collaborative storytelling and guided options that you can do with this book in addition to solo play?
Honestly, we didn't go into super detail. It was a skim on it, but what did you want to highlight about that?
I just wanted to highlight the fact that gamers, if you're thinking about this book and you're not sure how it quite, like what the use case is, to use a business term, this is obviously a solo RPG. So it's got all these probability matrices in it, random tables, oracles, other games call them. We decided to go with probability matrix because that sounded very Star Trek-y and very appropriate. But if you have a group of players or a group of friends who all want to play this game together, but none of you really want to be you don't want the work or the responsibility of being a game master, then let the book do that work, and just each of you create a character, and then just get into the narrative and use the probability matrices and use the random tables to what happens next, and just keep yes-anding as a group and get into it. And then the next piece of it is maybe you do have a game master and you want something of a more traditional RPG experience where you have a game master and then a group of players. You can do that certainly with this game too, because again, lean on the probability matrices, lean on the tools that are in the book, so that the game master, maybe you don't have to do quite as much work. You don't have to do a lot of prep time. You don't have to do a lot of, late night planning or whatever. And this is another riff episode that I want to do, Michael, is taking Captain's Log. I want us to, at some point, take Captain's Log and take some random mission brief out of the hundreds of mission briefs that we have available now, and get you and me and a couple other people on the call.
Let's do it.
And literally, we're going to play Captain's Log tonight. Bring a character. Let's not spend the whole night creating characters, or we do the creation and play even.
Yep.
We do creation and play and just have some basic elements of the characters in place. and then let's just take this mission brief and play it collaboratively. No game master. Let's just do it together and see what happens. And then do a separate episode sometime where one of us volunteers to be the game master, but it's really more of a facilitator because we're not actually, really dictating what happens. We're just relying on the book. I would love to do those episodes at some point. It doesn't have to be on launch, but maybe some point down the road.
And just to let you know, I touched on a little bit in the interview with Alison, but let's talk about it again, about that collaborative. Yeah. Captain's Log is the book you can take with you on a camping trip, and all you need is 2d20 dice, right? Because you don't need all the tokens, you don't need all the maps, you don't need all that. And you could sit around the campfire, and play that campfire yes and game. I don't know if you've ever done it, but someone starts telling a story. Yeah. And then once you're like, hey, I passed the book to you, roll some prompts. Yes, and then what happens to this character, or what happens to our crew? So I really feel that this is going to be this is the book I'm carrying with me on vacation, because I can just keep continuing the story. But I actually have my nephew who's 8 years old, and we already sit around the fire playing yes and in my backyard around the fire pit. And now I'm like, oh, he's going to love this when we start rolling dice to help him prompt. So I plan to play it with my 8-year-old, he's 9 now, but I plan to play it with him and see how he reacts to it, because it's what we do already around the campfire.
Yeah. Oh man, Michael, that's fascinating, because what sparked my brain while you were talking is we could or somebody, anyway, it doesn't have to be us, but somebody could take this book and use it as a teaching tool for writing. Or and what I'm thinking is, like, you got a group of people in a room, you got a whiteboard, and you're like, okay, go through the book. Let's come up with 5 prompts for a character, an adversary, a setting, a situation, an advantage, a complication. You can pre-roll 8 or 9 elements, right? Write those all down, and then tell those people in the workshop, okay, write a 5,000 word short story, including these 6 elements. Go.
Can I trip you out even more?
Yeah.
So I know this is going to be back in time, because next week's episode is when I first learned about it. We're actually taping this before next week's episode, because we're Star Trek and we can do that, and we don't pay attention to the time continuum whatsoever. Yeah. But last week incited me to purchase Hack the Cat and the subsequent Hack the Cat book about screenplay writing. Save the Cat. Sorry, Save the Cat. Save the Cat. So I purchased both books. I've been reading it. I'm halfway through the first book. So get this, Jim, to your point. In Hack the, I don't know why I'm calling it Hack the Cat. Maybe I shouldn't. You know what? Hold on. Let me digress for a moment. I actually wanted to write a book where I follow his rules, and write a book how I followed the rules to create a screenplay.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So I want to work like that. I want to show people how I follow the rules. And so therefore, that's why I keep thinking Hack the Cat, because I want to write a book called Hack the Cat. Okay. So anyways, now it's Save the Cat. But what I've already been planning to do, because he talks about I call it the 4-act structure, because he has Act 1, Act 2, Part A, Act 2, Part B, and then he has Act 3. Each one should have 10 index cards. I plan to use Captain's Log to see if I can actually write out a story that way, using the probability matrices, but following the Save the Cat method.
I love it.
Okay, so I'm trying to mix all these things together. I'm the kind, when I read something, I actually have to get my hands dirty to remember it. And it's such good information. So to your point, I think that this book could be the creative exercise that we're both feeding off of. I think writers or wannabe writers are going to learn to write with Captain's Log. And that would be such a boon if it ever does that for people. Oh my gosh, I would lose my mind. That would be so amazing. Yeah.
Anyway, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, folks, let's move on to gratitude and
okay,
wrap this one up.
Sure. So my gratitude, I'm going to repeat. I did it weeks ago, but again, I want to, go ahead and thank you, Jim Johnson, as project manager, giving me the opportunity to be lead writer. The rules were developed myself, but of course, Josh Allen, Alison Cybe did heavy lifting, yourself and Samantha Webb. And additional writing came in from Rachel Cruz, Nathan Dowdell, Keith Garrett, John Kennedy, Fred Love, Chris McCarver, Aaron Paulier, Jacob Ross, and Al Spader. So again, the great things don't happen in a vacuum, and it takes a village. And definitely, I'm hoping that this is groundbreaking, this rule set, and it really changes people's lives. So that's my gratitude.
Very nice. Yeah, and I think I'll echo that. I'll say thank you to all the writers involved in the book, our incredible diverse group of people who've come along on the ride for Star Trek Adventures for so long now. Grateful for all of them. Grateful for you, Michael, for taking on this challenge and being available and willing to take on the work when I really needed a lift. That was a godsend, and I don't think I can thank you enough for that. But
thank you.
You and the team delivered. Collectively, I had my piece of it, but it was you and Alison and Josh and Alan. I mean, everybody you mentioned had big roles in this and making it work. And of course, thank you to Nathan for creating Star Trek Adventures in the first place, the rule set, because we were able to use that as the launching point for this, and his great award-winning system made it relatively easy, right? We just had to figure out, okay, what can we take out without breaking it, right?
Exactly.
And, I think we got there, but we'll have to see how that goes. But thanks to all of you, all of them. I've said it before, but thanks to all the writing mentors I've had over the years, whether they knew it or not, I've learned so much from them, and we tried to apply that, all my learning, all your learning, and all of everybody else's learning into the book. I hope it's there. And in humble way, I hope this helps other writers down the road to be more creative and to think differently and to think outside the box and all that great stuff. Just hopefully more great tools for you to play with.
Yep, I think we're going to have to go on the road, Jim, and we're just going to have to teach storytelling at conferences at some point as our side gig.
With this,
yeah.
It's like, and teaching all the great values of Star Trek, right? Like leadership, diversity, inclusion, teamwork,
exactly.
All that stuff. Anyway, so all that being said, finally, I got to thank the fans, like all the fans of Star Trek Adventures, all the Star Trek fans, all the casual Star Trek fans. Without you, we would not be doing this. We were 7 years strong now. We would not still be here if you weren't still enjoying our products, talking about our products, getting people involved. The fan base is so supportive of each other. I see it every week, and I'm so excited to see that because it makes it so much easier to do our job, to make cool stuff for you, because like you keep enjoying it, and you share it with other people, and you get other people involved, and we're just building this nice ecosystem of fan support, and it's a joy, seriously, every day to go on social media and see what all the cool stuff people are doing with this game. Is just so humbling and exciting, because I just love it. Anyway, so that's all for tonight. So
sounds good. IDIC, everybody.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. And we'll talk to you all next time.